I think corporate subsidies must stop. An investigation finds that American taxes are being used to subsidize Amazon and Walmart low wages to workers.
We have a crisis of masculinity in the Western democracies.
Someone found Canadian beef being sold in Asia and compared it to the average national price in Canada, and it is substantially more in Canada than in that Asian country, that Southeast Asian country. Why the fuck is that possible?
Canada needs a new national vision.
Sweden is the rape capital of Europe, but who's to blame? Welcome to the Right Call Podcast, episode 108. Today, my name is Elliot Daniel, and I'm joined with our co-host,
Simmer Malhotra.
How you doing, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, Elliot. How's your week?
Well, the week just started.
Well, last week.
Well, weekend was good, except for the fact that I discovered my car's completely messed up. My tire nearly exploded. I almost died. I discovered that my tire, the entire thread on it, has been completely blown off. I'm surprised the thing did not explode on the highway. Cord or like like the cord on it, like the metal, the wires and everything just showing. I need new brake pads. I need more coolant. Some of my sensors are blown. Don't buy a Benz. They're just trouble. I wish I was driving a big badass truck like yours.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
I do love my truck.
So let's just start by saying, guys, we love the feedback. Everything's growing. Channel is going good. Videos on YouTube's are doing quite good. We read every single comment you guys post. By the way, we love it. So write down below what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you support the channel? Do you like what we do? Do you some things you want to see us talking about? By all means, we read every single freaking comment you guys write, and we do it for your enjoyment. And I hope you enjoy it as much as we enjoy shooting.
Yeah. Actually, on a side note, I wanted to give a little clarification to our older viewers, our boomer viewers. Mm-hmm. We had a couple of boomers leave a quick comment on our YouTube video saying essentially like, you're going to lose your audience by, alienating us because we didn't vote liberal. Mm-hmm. And my message to those people is that, well, we're not talking about specific people. We're just talking about a group of voters that predominantly vote a certain way. Absolutely. And so if I think it's around 65% of boomers are voting for the Liberal Party.
Well, the latest statistics actually they're showing the cohort that is 65 plus is like 72%. It is by far the most liberal leaning cohort. 55 plus is 65-ish plus percent, which is crazy. We're the only country in the OECD that flipped the script. Because normally, it's the younger you are, the more liberal you are, left-leaning, and the older you get, the more conservative, right? Life hits you, reality hits you, and then you realize, wait a second, being idealist is cool, at face value, but it's like communism. It works on paper, doesn't work in real life. However, in Canada, since the youth is being screwed so much by the last 10 years of economic policies and social policies that have been put in place by one government, the Liberal government, we're at a point now where, for the first time ever, the younger generation is more conservative than the older generation, which is wild. Yeah. But yes, absolutely. We're not talking directly about you. We're talking about the cohort in general. But I know there's plenty of boomers that are conservatives. But in general, your cohort tends to be considerably more liberal. And it's not a personal attack. It's just facts and data.
Yes, sir.
There you go. So in today's episode, we're going to chit-chat a little bit on my end. We keep being told that we are corporate shills because we're conservative, but the reality is I'm going to harp a lot on corporations today. I'm going to talk about oligopolies in Canada, which is, there's only one other country that understands oligopolies as much as Canada, and it's Australia, another country that is very similar to Canada. Actually, they're kind of like the southern Canadians. Mm-hmm. The warmer Canadians to an extent. We're going to talk about American taxpayers again, subsidizing corporations in the US, which I think is completely ludicrous and should not happen. And finally, talk more about Sweden and its crime epidemic. These numbers are going to blow your mind. It's scary, it's wild, and it makes you wonder, why would a country do this to themselves? But that's about it on my end. What about you, sir?
Well, I wanted to talk specifically about a story that came out of Texas about a father shooting his daughter potentially over an argument over Donald Trump. And I have some details I want to share, but it was a very interesting story. And I want to talk a little bit about guns and what they represent and the importance of them, and also the negative side of the negative effects that it could have in society. I also want to talk about a crisis of masculinity that we have in, I would say, the Western democracies.
Yeah.
And that's just a whole segment I prepared with some of my ideas regarding that. And finally, a new national vision for the future of Canada.
I love that.
I prepared a segment on that because I think that the politicians that we have in power, that we have, are not addressing it with the seriousness that it needs to be addressed with. And so I can't wait to get into that.
Yeah,
so.
no, that's good because, you know, we do harp and complain about a lot of things. And I honestly kind of hate the negativity. I was really looking forward back in April. Was it? Yeah, April, the last election, for the Conservatives to come in so that we can actually talk about benefits that Canada was having. Instead, when we lost, I thought to myself, fuck, it's going to be another year, maybe 4 years, maybe who knows, of complaining about liberal policies. It gets a little old, but nobody is doing it in the mainstream media. CBC's not doing it. CTV's not doing it. Global's not doing it. All the journal, all the newspapers aren't doing it. So it falls on us to sadly do it, even though it can be a little bit annoying. Speaking of falling on us to do this, we're just going to touch quickly on Canada before heading to the US, because then we'll hit the American taxpayers and then we'll hit the guns of the US.
Sure.
But in Canada, it came out just a few days ago that the Supreme Court of Canada, shockingly, I did not believe it, upheld Newfoundland and Labrador's controversial COVID-19 travel ban. If you remember, back in, I think it was maybe like 2021, 2022, maybe it was even at the start in 2020, the province of Newfoundland and Labrador completely sealed off the province, preventing any non-resident from entering the province under the guise of COVID-19. Now, that is a clear violation of the Charters of Rights and Freedom, namely Section 6, which is mobility rights. Every Canadian is allowed to obviously enter, stay, and leave Canada. That's a basic, but every Canadian is allowed to travel between provinces. That is a fundamental charter rights. You as a Canadian, whether you're from Quebec or from British Columbia or from PEI, you're allowed to go to any other province, take up residence, seek employment, or just travel and visit. It is your right. Well, by doing so, the province of Newfoundland and Labrador violated it. So this was brought before lower instance courts, which all upheld it, and they brought it up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court did not mince words. They said directly the following: the travel restrictions amounted to a limitation of freedoms. So they recognized that. And governments must exercise significant caution when engaging in such restrictions. However, Newfoundland and Labrador's travel restrictions were a reasonable and justified measure in a free and democratic country in the COVID-19 pandemic. And this goes back to last week when we compared briefly the Bill of Rights to the Charter of Rights and Freedom. And if you were talking about Pierre Trudeau and how good the Charter is, and I took a little bit the other point saying, no, I think the Charter of Rights and Freedom is shit. Because I said Section 1 allows governments to trample on your rights right off the bat. This is why in the US, for example, it was so hard to actually put in place all these COVID measure restrictions, because the Bill of Rights is immutable. It cannot be infringed, period, unless it's like martial law. But like the threshold for that is ridiculously high. So I have the Section 1 here because I mentioned it, but I want people to really hear what I mean by that. Section 1, the very first paragraph of our Charter of Rights and Freedom, states that the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedom guarantees the rights and freedoms set out in it, subject only to such reasonable limits prescribed by law as can be demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society. So basically, as long as a government says that it's justified and that, you know, in a free and democratic society, we're good, the courts will always protect the government. And this is another instance when your rights were trampled and you were told, well, to protect you, it was justified. And this, to me, is such a slippery slope. And the fact that we keep allowing it and that we don't rise up and say, no, we should never. It should be a sacred document. It should never be infringed. And that we allow our Supreme Court to just kind of become like, yeah, it's okay. Just trample on it because it's needed for protection. No, because crises can always be manufactured, and the justification of it's for public good is such an easy one. You could just twist the facts and the narratives and just cause mass hysteria and panic, and people can be aroused to emotions, and they can be like, no, I'm scared, and take away all your rights. And I have a big problem with that.
Well, we saw it during COVID. We saw it during
the protests.
Yes, during the Freedom Convoy.
Yeah.
And I think we will continue to see it. I think we'll continue to see it with the issues with the United States. I think we'll see it. We'll continue to see it with our new relationship with China. So these things do extend.
That's a good point. Yeah, because we can just be like, oh, Donald Trump bad. Orange man bad. So now we need to restrict people's freedom to save Canada or something. I don't know, man. I'm against that. Supreme Court of Canada, shame on you. Shame on you. You guys, we rely on you guys to protect us, and you don't. So, but moving on, let's go to America real quick. Personally, and this before we started the show, I said you may not like me on this point, but I think corporate subsidies must stop. An investigation finds that American taxes are being used to subsidize Amazon and Walmart low wages to workers. You know, over there, most of them earn peanuts, you know what I mean? And they're only allowed to earn peanuts because the government makes up the difference. So 33% of Amazon workers need public assistance. That's crazy, right? 25% of Walmart workers are on SNAP. SNAP is food stamps for the people who don't, because it's an American thing, right? 23% of Amazon workers are on SNAP.
That's insane.
That is wild. 48% of Amazon frontline warehouse workers experienced food insecurity in the prior 3 months. And that's not in Canada, by the way. In Canada, it'd be like, yeah, it sounds like all Canadians, but this is Americans. Walmart ranks as one of the top employers of SNAP and Medicaid recipients in nearly every state studied. And just again, for understanding's sake, if you fall below a certain threshold of income, you qualify for free government medical care, right? They say all the time in the US, you're gonna die because you don't have coverage. False. If you're poor, they cover you. In just 9 states, over 14,500 Walmart employees relied on SNAP, and around 10,350 were on Medicaid. Walmart's low-wage model costs U.S. taxpayer around $6.2 billion annually. That's $6.2 billion out of, say, well, government budgets, taxpayers, that the corporation is not paying on wages. And I'm going to tie it in after. Amazon warehouse workers in some regions, like California, saw up to 62% of workers and their families receiving public assistance benefits, including 20% on food stamps. Keep this in mind. These are trillion-dollar companies. Amazon is almost $3 trillion of market cap. Walmart is over $1 trillion of market cap. Okay. Liberals will attack us saying we support corporations all the time over people, and I think that's false. I don't believe in any subsidies. That's the point of free market economics. And this indirectly is a form of subsidy, sadly. And you're going to tell me, yeah, and I thought about this. I'm like, well, nobody's forcing them to take the jobs. You're right. Nobody's forcing them to take the jobs. However, the thing is, if you continuously allow these companies to underpay people, and you create a system that allows these people to make up the difference with government work, well, you're not creating the pain that is required for people to really stand up for themselves. What I mean by that is the following. Let's say there was no government safety net, which sometimes I'm for, sometimes I'm against. There was no such thing as SNAP, food stamps, and there was no such thing as Medicaid. Well, do you think as many people would take up these jobs? They'd be like, it's not even enough. And they may be a drop in supply of workers, which would inadvertently and directly cause these companies to have to up the wages to find workers. So these companies don't, because they know that the government will subsidize them, or not them directly. It's not a direct subsidy. It's a subsidy by indirect means. Personally, I think when it comes to the economy, governments should be limited to adjudicating disputes and contracts, so upholding contracts and tort, basically, through the judiciary and enforcing antitrust laws, because I think, anti-competition practices are not good in a free democratic society, or a free market economy, I should say. And that's it. Maybe also like consumer laws. I think consumer laws may be important. But ultimately, to see that these trillion-dollar companies are underpaying people because they know the government will protect them is to me, it's ludicrous. And we're not talking about small companies, small startups that have cash flow issues. We're talking about, again, trillion-dollar companies. Yeah. $6.2 billion is, to be quite honest with you, a blip on the radar of Amazon. So they could stand to pay their workers more so that they don't require fucking SNAP. So to me, that's an issue. We cannot thrive as a society if corporations hoard money that way. And I'm a capitalist. I believe in free market, but this is not free market.
It's not free market at all. And I don't know why you thought I wouldn't agree with you, but I totally agree with you actually on a lot of levels. We have to do the math on the issue. Obviously, of course, I think philosophically, you're totally correct. We have to sit down and do the math. And I do agree that massive corporations should not need to take government subsidies to, keep the operation running. I don't think it makes logical sense.
Yeah, because think about it. Okay, not only do they have an untold advantage already when it comes to negotiating prices with suppliers. That we get. And it's just due to the sheer volume of orders they have. Fair, that's fine. I think that's still free market. But then you have the small mom and pop shop who can't get away with hoping their employees are going to go on SNAP or on Medicaid. They have to pay, and oftentimes in the smaller markets too, they have to pay a living wage. Now, mind you, some people I'm sure in the comments are going to be like, yeah, well, you got to increase the federal minimum wage. I don't believe in that either. I don't believe in a minimum wage. I think free market dynamics should dictate what the minimum wage is. Because we're seeing the flip side in Quebec, where I think the minimum wage now is like almost 16. Like you would know better than me because
I think it's $16.20 or something like that, around just over $16.
Which to me is freaking wild as well, right? Yeah. Because you do kneecap effectively the smaller companies by doing such a thing. I think we should just go back to free market economics, keep government at a minimum. Yeah. Get out of the fucking economy. Let the private sector manage it. Yeah. Enforce contract laws, enforce antitrust. Antitrust needs to be used a heck of a lot more, by the way. And we're going to touch on that when it comes to Canada's oligopolies. And then, of course, consumer protection, not to the EU standards, which is way too stringent. But, also you can't have companies just like sell you a warranty and then not honor it, for example, or sell you like a lemon and then just like, oh, but you bought the lemon, so be it. So consumer laws have a place, but that's it.
Elliot, I have a whole opinion on this, and next week, what I'll do is I'll sit down and I'll prepare a segment on what you're talking about, and on corporate subsidies, on free market, on the job market. It's something I'm very passionate about. It's something I'm not ready to talk about today properly, but it's something I'm definitely going to take the time to next week put something together.
Awesome. So now let's talk about pew-pews in the US.
Oh, actually, it's not a laughing matter.
Oh, yeah, seriously.
But the topic transition was funny.
Editors, put a grim music right now.
So, on a serious note, a father shot his daughter over an argument about Donald Trump in Prosper, Texas.
Yeesh.
Here's what happened. The victim was Lucy Harrison, age 23, a British woman visiting her father. A British woman visiting her father in Prosper, Texas. She and her father, Chris Harrison, had a heated political debate about Trump and guns earlier that day. Later, he took her into a bedroom and shot her in the chest with a handgun. He claims that he accidentally discharged it while he was showing it to her. Now, there's some context because that sounds like an insanely wild story. Evidence indicated that he had been drinking and had relapsed into alcoholism that day. Witness accounts said that Lucy, his daughter, felt uneasy about his volatility and opposition to firearms. So here's the outcome legally that came out. A Texas grand jury declined to indict him, meaning he faced no criminal charges. Okay. However, a UK coroner reviewing the case ruled the killing unlawful and said the result of gross negligence. Saying that he had pointed a loaded gun and pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
Authorities treat it as an accidental discharge, meaning he will not be facing charges. And honestly, I don't even care about the political angle that people will try to attach to an issue like this. Because it's not about Trump and it's not about ideology. It's about civil responsibility. Okay. And I'm going to say something that should not be controversial, but apparently might be. If you're under the influence, you shouldn't be handling a firearm.
Concur.
Period. Full stop. I don't care if you're in your house. I don't care if it's legal where you live. I don't care if you've owned guns your whole life. It's a lethal tool. We already accept this logic everywhere else. You can't drive drunk. You can't operate industrial machinery drunk. You can't fly an airplane drunk. Why? Because impairment plus a dangerous tool leads to a predictable disaster. This wasn't some unavoidable tragedy. It was a chain of stupid decisions. Notably, alcohol, emotional tension over political debate, weapon introduced into the situation, and a lack of discipline.
Yeah.
Okay. And once a gun enters that environment, the margin for error is 0. So you don't get a second chance. And now someone is dead. And now people will argue, was it intentional? Was it negligence? Was it legal? Should there be stricter gun laws? To me, all of that misses the point. Handling a firearm is a serious responsibility. And the standard should be simple. If you're impaired, you don't touch it. Not because the government said so, but because you respect what that object is capable of doing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's basic discipline. Gun owners may get defensive about what I'm saying, but the strongest gun cultures are built on responsibility. And so
I don't think gun owners are going to get a defensive, at least not in Canada. And even in the US, I'm willing to say most Americans, look, I'm a huge proponent. Let's start with this. Huge believer and proponent of the Second Amendment. I believe it is fundamental in a free society, actually, to have the right to defend yourself. Most importantly, to possess the same kind of tools that your government would have. You need to have access to force because guess what? Shit can get tyrannical. You need to be able to, counter it. However, every decent gun owners knows the firearm safety rules. They are drilled into you in Canada when you take your Canadian firearm safety course, which is required to get your possession and acquisition license. The first and foremost is you never point a firearm, whether it's loaded or not, at any object you don't intend on destroying. Period. So that's definitely not someone, but at all times, even at home, when it is you're cleaning it, for example, you always mind where the muzzle is at all times. Number 2, finger off the trigger at all times until you're ready to fire. When you pick up a gun, and have you ever shot a firearm before?
Yes, I have.
And we'll go shooting this summer, okay?
Mm-hmm.
It'll be a blast. But you take the gun and your finger is high off the trigger guard, high on the frame, for example, of a handgun, or even the lower receiver of, say, a rifle. You never put it on, ever, 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 ever. And then you also always confirm what you're aiming at and what's behind it as well, by the way, right? Because a bullet can carry and go punch through, let's say, a target. There could be something behind it. Those are basic rules that as long as you follow them, even if the gun malfunctions, because it could be a negligent discharge caused by a technical malfunction. It does happen, but as long as you follow the rules, nobody will ever get hurt, ever. So clearly this man, drunk or not, failed to follow the basic firearm safety rules. And personally, and I'm not the grand jury and I was not privy to all the evidence they were presented, but to me, that's a case of manslaughter at best and involuntary homicide at worst. I mean, I don't think it was premeditated, so it doesn't, it's not a first degree murder here. But I mean, there needs to be consequences to such a thing. It's a tragedy. It's horrible.
Yeah.
So no, that's no. I mean, and you're right. You said it very, very well. A firearm is not a toy. It's a lethal weapon. It needs to be treated with respect at all times, even when it's unloaded. Because it's muscle memory. And that's why, even when it's unloaded, because you never know. And you always, by the way, you're supposed to also prove your firearm. You're always supposed to check it. Every time you grab a gun, that's another firearm safety rule. You prove it. Prove it is an acronym, but you ensure that it's safe. So you open the slide, you remove the magazine, you check the chamber. You make sure it's empty. If you do that, no accidents will happen. So shame on his father.
Well, and here's the thing. If you choose to own a firearm, you choose to hold yourself to a higher level of discipline than the average person. And so that's the trade-off. Uncle Ben from Spider-Man said it best, with great power comes great responsibility. And firearm owners have a tremendous level of responsibility when they own their firearm. Mm-hmm. For me, it's I would love to own a firearm in my home at some point. If I own a home, I believe it's my right to protect that home. I invested my energy. I have a family. It's my right to protect that home. And if I want to own a firearm to protect that home, I have the right. That is my personal opinion. Now, if there's a gun in my house, and I know there's a gun in my house, at no point am I ever treating it without the extreme severity that with the seriousness that it deserves to be treated with. Sure. And so I'm not pulling it out and saying, "Oh, check out my gun." It's just an irresponsible, immature behavior that this man did, and it had serious consequences. And this brings me to the next topic, actually.
I'll just give you a little tip
Go
real
ahead.
quick. In the event that you do eventually apply for your possession acquisition license, the government of Canada or the RCMP will have on the form, because you have to state the reason why you want a firearm. And there's 4 reasons that you can choose.
Yeah.
The first one is personal safety or
Yeah.
security, protection of self. Number 2 is hunting. Number 3 is sports shooting. And number 4 is collecting.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a trick question. And they do that on purpose. Even though under the law, technically personal security or safety is a valid, recognized reason in the criminal code, it is never accepted in Canada.
No, I'm saying if I live in the US.
Oh, but even in Canada,
yeah.
right? Never choose personal safety because they will refuse your application. Just write sports shooting or hunting.
Yeah.
This cracks me up because let's be honest. Someone breaks into my home or attempts to cause harm to the people I love and I care for. The least of my worry is what tool I'm going to use. I'm going to use everything in my power to protect them. That's what a man does, period. There's no ifs or buts.
Yeah.
And I do think, by the way, that self-defense laws in Canada need to be reviewed. I do believe in castle doctrine. I'd even say so far as I believe in stand your ground law, which is in the US, stand your ground and castle doctrine are 2 different things. Some states have one, some states have both. Castle doctrine is that your home is your castle and you're allowed to utilize any force necessary to protect it. And it's not necessarily that someone's applying force to you, just the threat of danger is enough. So that's the base minimum. And I think, again, every self-respecting man would agree with such a thing.
Yeah.
Or any mother of a family will respect that as well. It's super, super, super important. I'll push it further. I believe in stand your ground laws. Stand your ground laws it kind of extends everything to your own personal space outside of your home. And it's that you have no duty to retreat. So if someone applies force to you or threat of force to you, in Canada, for example, you must first retreat. You must run away. You must avoid it, which is probably the wise decision, by the way, most of the time. But sometimes you just can't. In the US, what states that have stand your ground laws is that you have no duty to retreat. So you're allowed to just stand your ground and utilize any force up to lethal force to protect yourself effectively. I think an armed society is a polite society, ultimately. And it's not about, oh, let's be gung-ho and shoot everyone. No. But the reality is that criminals and ill-intended people will always choose soft targets, people that are weaker, defenseless, and that don't pose a threat to them. So if you equalize a playing field and allow everyone to be capable of protecting themselves, it makes people second guess these things. And statistically, it's proven that states that have higher levels of concealed weapon licenses in the population tend to have lower rates of violent crime.
Not a surprise.
So there you go.
Well, there's something you said in what you just said, which I really gravitated towards, which you said a real man, like a man would like any father would feel this way. And so that's what it made me think, because this man actually killed his daughter, and unintentionally or intentionally, I don't know, but let's say it's unintentionally, by his own hand, by his own failure in judgment.
Yeah. And
so it made me think about the fact that we have a crisis of masculinity in the Western democracies. Yeah. And I had to sit down and really pick my brain to find what is the issue. You have to like dig deep to really understand what is the actual issue, what's actually happening right now. And this is what I came up with. So you might think I'm right, you might think I'm wrong, but we'll see what happens, okay?
Testosterone. We need more testosterone.
We're living through a period where too many men are drifting. No direction, no mission, no plan. And when men drift, societies drift with it. And it's measurable. Marriage rates across developed countries have fallen roughly 20 to 30% in recent decades. Fertility across the West sits at around 1.4 to 1.7 children per woman, well below the 2.1 replacement level. Male workforce participation has declined long term. Men are starting families later or not at all. And that is a structural and societal issue. For most of history, men did not have the luxury of drifting. You built or your people suffered. You led or chaos took over. Responsibility was not optional, It was survival. Today, survival is possible without purpose, and so purpose disappears. Men can consume without producing, exist without direction, avoid responsibility indefinitely, and the consequences only show up later.
Yeah.
In the form of lower birth rates, weaker families, economic passivity, and an aging society. And let's define masculinity, real masculinity. Masculinity is not aggression, it's responsibility. It's waking up and knowing that you carry weight, that the future depends on you, that your family depends on you, and that no one is coming to save you. That mindset creates structure, it creates discipline and stability. And when it disappears, drift, lackadaisical energy takes over. Comfort, distraction, short-term pleasure, OnlyFans, weed, drugs, consumption. And women respond to the same environment, right? When stability drops, family formation gets delayed, trust drops, self-preservation increases. So we talk about, radical feminism. Well, if you can't count on your man, well, you have to take responsibility in your own hands.
Yep.
And so when the future looks uncertain, people invest in themselves first, and that's human nature. Masculinity and femininity were designed to work together. Men build structure, direction, provision, protection, infrastructure, and women build continuity, family, connection, life within that structure. And when both are strong together, societies grow, they prosper, and they thrive. And so does the economy as a result. When one weakens, imbalance follows. And here's where government quietly benefits from the drift. Okay. A population without direction is easier to manage. Okay. People that are disengaged from economics, finance, long-term planning are less likely to challenge policy, debt expansion, currency devaluation, or bureaucratic overreach. When individuals stop building their own stability, they become more dependent on institutional stability. And dependence shifts power towards the government, upward. And you see it in the numbers. Government spending as a share of GDP has steadily grown across Western economies over decades. Public debt continues to rise. Monetary policy shapes daily life more than individual productivity. Yet, public pushback is relatively muted compared to past generations that used to react aggressively. You heard about the Boston Tea Party. That was over like a 2% tax or something.
2% tax, yes.
And that was a violent war over just a 2% tax.
Well, it kickstarted, yes, the Revolutionary War. So no, it was a tax stamp. It was the stamp tax. Ooh, not the tax stamp.
Yeah.
Every time you needed a piece of paper or document, you needed to pay a 2% tax on every. It was insane. People stood up for something.
Yes. And this is the issue in modern society. When men disengage from finance, trade, production, governments will naturally fill the vacuum. And expanded governments breed corruption without any remorse. So system expands where individuals retreat, authority grows where responsibility shrinks. And over time, the balance shifts from self-governance, free trade, free market capitalism, to managed governance. Now, that sounds quite dark because of the position we are currently in. However, our masculine instincts are not gone. They're just dormant. Men still want purpose, family, stability, growth. They're just stuck in comfort loops. History is clear on one thing. When men regain direction, everything stabilizes. Families form, birth rates rise, economies grow, communities strengthen, and institutions become accountable again. Leadership starts at the individual level. This is my personal opinion. Learn math, learn money, learn economics, build something, take responsibility. That's true masculinity. Not loud, not angry, just focused, dedicated, committed. Real strength is planning long-term, delaying gratification, and building stability to protect what you built. That is the backbone of civilization. It's always been like that. And when enough men return to that, societies do not collapse. They reset, they rebuild, and they move forward stronger than ever. And that's the piece I created on the crisis of masculinity.
Well, here's an interesting statistic, right? People that are married and, well, let's go with men. Men that are married and have kids are the highest earners in society. And I don't think it's directly tied to like, oh, get married and you'll make more money. No, it's just, it creates a sense, like you said, of responsibility. When you know that someone's depending on you, when you have a family that depends on you, you're willing to do what's hard. Doing what's hard, well, by definition, is hard. It's not easy. I mean, look, I go to the gym every day. Believe me, I don't want to. I'd much rather be a fat, pudgy, ice cream eating, Nutella loving, Rachel Gilmore. So, that's what I'd rather do. But unlike her, I get up and I actually go to the gym. And the thing is, with purpose, you're willing to do what's hard. You will make the sacrifices. I had a hockey coach once upon a time that used to say this, and it stayed with me forever. Short-term pleasure equals long-term pain. Short-term pain equals long-term pleasure. We have turned into a society now that seeks constant short-term pleasure. And we're starting to see, well, the pain rear its ugly head. And that's why many times on the show, we've said that what's needed to save Canada won't be pleasant. It will be hard. And we can look at history. When Margaret Thatcher came into power, the UK was lost. It was shrinking. It was collapsing effectively. And the first 2 years of her government, things continued to get actually worse. It exponentially got worse because she put measures in place that were hard. It shifted a lot of pain onto the people, but then the people rose. And then the UK, I don't want to say came back to its former glory, but by the end of her government, the UK was back in a good position. It's not easy. It's like another analogy. A room always gets messier before it gets cleaner. You're cleaning your room or your car, it's going to get messier at first and it gets cleaner. So if people start doing the right thing on an individual level, taking care of their family, their community, heck, to take the words of, is it Peterson that said that?
Yeah,
when he
Jordan
said
Peterson.
Yeah, when he said, just clean your bedroom, start with your bedroom.
Mhm.
Yeah, clean your bedroom, start at the local level. And if everyone does this, then Canada, the US, the West, the world will be better off. That's
I
a very
agree.
good point.
And you know what? You said Canada. You were talking about Canada. Like, that's the issue in Canada. Well, Canada needs a new national vision.
Mm-hmm.
Us as a country need to have a new vision for where we're headed as a nation. We don't just need policy tweaks. We need a national expansion strategy. New cities, mass housing, aggressive investments, faster approvals, a country that builds faster than its population grows. A serious vision would be obvious. Okay. Plan entirely new urban corridors instead of patching existing cities. Let's build hundreds of thousands of homes annually at an industrial scale. Let's use tax competitiveness to pull global capital into Canada. Let's expand our energy, our trade infrastructure, and manufacturing capacity simultaneously. Let's treat growth as a national objective again. Countries that build get richer, and countries that hesitate fall behind. The opportunity is massive. Canada has land, resources, global credibility, and one of the highest immigration demands in the world. The raw ingredients for expansion already exist. What's missing is execution and political courage. And the numbers explain exactly why we need this new national vision. Okay. Canada added over 1.2 million people in a single year, and yet housing supply continues to fall behind demand. The country needs millions of new homes by 2030 just to restore affordability. But productivity trails the US by roughly a quarter. So And business investment, per worker has been declining, and the federal debt has surged past the $1 trillion mark. Living costs are rising faster than wages, and younger Canadians are delaying family and ownership. And this isn't a left or right issue. It's a symptom of a country that has stopped building at scale. The Liberals talk transformation, but have delivered a weaker dollar, more debt, and growing poverty. The Conservatives understand the growth formula, but all often default to political caution instead of national level ambition. None of them are presenting a true build-out vision for this country. That's my personal opinion. What Canada needs is clarity, new cities planned, not just densification debates. We need housing supply doubled, not just incremental approvals. We need energy development tied to infrastructure funding. Like, we cannot just keep throwing money at a problem and expecting for the problem to solve itself. We need to tie our money to results. Productivity rises when capital meets labor, and that is what will return optimism to Canada. And so that is another piece I prepared on what we actually need in this country for there to be actual change. What do you think about that, Elliot?
I think Canada needs a lot. Where to begin with Canada? We're a nation that's lost. We've lost our flame at the individual level. I feel like just apathy. Apathy has consumed and corrupted every strata of society. You walk the streets and you ask people, first of all, do they even follow or understand politics? Most of them is no. They'll know the headlines, and that's about it. Everyone knows there's pain. Everyone knows that things are not doing good, but we keep being told there's a new boogeyman. It was Stephen Harper, then it was COVID, then it became Donald Trump. Now it's the Conservatives that are just blocking every aspect. There's just always a new scapegoat, and people just buy it. They just buy it. So perhaps what Canada needs, and I'll sum it up in one thing, Canada needs extreme accountability. We need to keep our government accountable. That's a given. But we also need to keep ourselves accountable and demand more. And if we can be honest with ourselves through extreme accountability, then we stop blaming everyone around us. Stephen Harper actually was it last week? He had an event, and he gave a great speech at that event in Ottawa to unveil his official portrait and everything. It was beautiful. It was great. And he said that we have to stop blaming Trump for everything. Canada's issues right now are self-inflicted. But if we can't, it's like honestly, it's like a fat person who keeps blaming spoons or the ice cream is too good. The food is not wholesome enough. Yeah, but there is good food to be had. There's a gym to be gone to. You don't even have to go to a gym. Go for a walk. Take extreme ownership over your life. Let's take extreme ownership over our country, and let's do what's needed. And only once we do such a thing, it'll change. And we were discussing this before we started recording, but Canadians they'll just keep accepting it, right? We said what's going to change? The polls are not looking good for Conservatives. Economically, it doesn't matter. You can keep saying debt is this and debt is that, and the economy is bad and the dollar is weak, and people are just yeah, okay. They're just barely surviving, and that's good enough. That's not a country that has a vision. We need to bring back a common ethos. What it reminds me of a movie here, Miracle on Ice. It followed Team USA, that movie, when they won the gold medal, or was it the silver medal, whatever. What it was is they beat in the semifinal the Soviets. And the Soviets were the best hockey team ever. And at the time, the US were not allowed to use professional players. So if you played in the NHL and you were being paid, you could not participate in Olympics, because Olympics was technically for amateur players only. And they were outclassed, outperformed. They had no belief in themselves that they could ever win. And the coach came and they gave the freaking 20 players an objective and a confidence in themselves to rise above and to accomplish literal miracle, and they beat the Soviets, the best hockey team ever assembled. Well, Canada's this. We're defeated. We're broken. We're apathetic to everything. We're just coasting through life. We're like a lost teenager. We need a father figure to come and to shake some sense and to say, I believe in you, I believe in what you can do, here's the path, shut the fuck up, and just do.
Walk it.
And walk it. That's it. And I do believe we could walk ourselves out of this. I do believe that.
Yeah.
But another thing Canada might need, however, is to look at its monopoly problem. Not monopoly man problem, although in Canada right now, if you're a monopoly man, you'd be making a lot of money because mucho expensive real estate. But everything costs more in Canada, that we know. Okay, and actually it came out recently that the price of beef in Canada is more expensive than in some Asian countries. Someone found Canadian beef being sold in Asia. I'm not sure if it's Thailand or Vietnam or something, and compared it to the average national price in Canada, and it is substantially more in Canada than in that Asian country, that Southeast Asian country. Why the fuck is that possible? And you know this because you do import-export. You need to ship that freaking beef all the way over there. There's a massive cost associated. So we should have cheaper prices here. But there's a reason for that, in my opinion. There's a cause to our huge monopoly problem. Well, actually, it's more technically an oligopoly problem. First, let's examine this. In the grocery markets, we have Loblaws, Sobeys, and Metro Richelieu, which control 89% of the supermarket sector. 89%, 3 companies. Okay, in the airline industry, we have Air Canada and WestJet that dominate 78% of all domestic air travel. Okay. In telecom, we have Rogers, Bell, and Telus, which to themselves controlled 90% of all mobile subscribers. And Canada has some of the highest cell phone plans in the world. This blows the mind of Europeans whenever I'm in Europe. And that's a point I like to say is that, like, yeah, I pay like $100 a month for my phone plan. Mind you, it's the top one. And they're like, what? I pay like €7. It's like, hey, it's a huge discrepancy, right? Even in the US, same thing.
Yeah.
The banking market, the big 5 national banks, right? TD, RBC, Bank of Montreal, Scotia, CIBC, and National Bank. And that's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My bad, but whatever. National Bank is not considered one of the big 5s. They control 93% of all banking assets. And banking in Canada is so bad compared to, like, open banking in Europe is insane. Like, the European financial market for banking is crazy compared to Canada. In nearly every industries, we only have a few big players that capture all the market. This in turn stifles competition and thus leads to sky-high prices for consumers, lower quality products of services, little to no options, and much less innovation, obviously. And we're effectively held hostage, switching. I mean, let's say you're not happy with your cell phone carrier, right? Okay, you're going to go to Rogers and then they still screw you over like they did with me like 2 months ago. Well, then you go to Telus and that's it. Where else are you going to go? Canadians are also getting shafted from both sides because, yes, there's horrible government policies driving inflation way up. And then on the other side, we have oligopolies that are also driving prices way higher than inflation is. So now we could debate why that is. But Canada we need to enact, if we don't have already, or enforce if we do, because I'm not too sure on this and I'm not going to speculate, antitrust laws. I know the US has very strong antitrust laws that have been used many times over to actually break up monopolies. Standard Oil is one of the best known one, but they do that all the time. Actually, I'm pretty sure Alphabet right now is being brought in front of an antitrust lawsuit. I think there's talks about bringing Meta to an antitrust lawsuit as well. Canada never does this. We just accept the status quo that we have oligopolies that have captured the entire market and the consumer loses across the board. That's a huge problem in Canada as well. Huge problem.
No, I totally agree. And, part of the US-Canada trade negotiations, I have a hunch, I could be wrong, but I think part of it is that Donald Trump wants more competition. He wants American companies to come into Canada in telecoms, in food. And these oligopolies who spend a lot of money financing political
it's lobbyists.
leaders.
Yeah, it's a lot of lobbyists.
And they their interests are not for more competition because they know that the government's tax revenues are going to go down if there's more competition, in the sense that if Verizon suddenly shows up in Canada and cuts the average cell phone bill in half, well, the GST and the QST on that cell phone bill are going to be a lot lower, and a lot of consumers will swap to the lower cost alternative. So the government doesn't have an incentive to create competition, and neither do the major companies. However, to create more competition does lower the prices for all the consumers. And so,
but it increases the quality as well.
Absolutely.
And it increases innovation.
Absolutely.
You've mentioned the fact that Canada falls behind in terms of industrial productivity. But another thing that we fall behind is also in R&D per capita or R&D investment. We don't innovate. But our companies have no incentives. These oligopolies, they have the market captured. Why would they fucking innovate?
Yeah.
They're just happy to sit back and enjoy their fat freaking market share. It's ludicrous. Canada, and another country that has a big issue is Australia. Australia is the exact same picture. Now, we could actually do an entire episode as to why. Huge territory, small population, high barriers to entry, high regulatory burden, lots of red tape. That's government issues. There's also a geography issue. But overall, Canadians are being, like I said, completely taken advantage of by these corporations.
Yeah.
And again, we are free market capitalists. We believe in capitalism, but an oligopoly is not capitalism.
No, I want to invite more competition. I want Verizon. This is probably what's holding up the trade negotiations between Canada and the US. That the president of the United States probably wants American America produces a ton of food.
Yes.
They produce a ton of beef. They produce a lot of like corn and all the things that we eat, like cereal, and we charge massive tariffs, I think, on milk too, on foreign milk. So there are tariffs that Canada charges on the US that they don't want to cut down. They don't want Verizon to walk into Canada and cut the average cell phone bill by like 25% overnight, and they don't want their tax gravy train to stop. And so that's the issue, and the Liberals will never give it to Canadians to have more competition, have more American companies come in and compete with Canadian companies, because then when you're competing, you're on even footing.
For sure. Well, and not only that, but first of all,
then you're incentivized to innovate and produce better. Sorry.
But for example, the CRTC prevented Verizon. There was a point where Verizon wanted to come to Canada, and the CRTC completely blocked them. American banks have been wanting to enter the Canadian market for very long, because Canadian banks are in the American market.
Yeah.
If you go down to Florida, you have TD Banks out there. Yeah. RBC also has cross-border banking. So we've entered the American market, but we refuse. We do not allow American banks to enter the Canadian market. We protect our little fucking oligopoly. And I know this for a fact. The president absolutely does. He's like, look, what is fair for you guys? We allow competition in, turn it around. And by the way, I have a bank account with TD in the US, TD America. When I used to live in the US, I still have that bank account. And the quality of service that I get from the American bank, like for example, it's a 24-hour support line in the US. 24 hours. I've called them at like 3 a.m. before. And they answered, and they were like on the ball. In Canada, the second it's like past 5:30, good luck. You know what I mean? That's a prime example. Yeah. At least though, in Canada, we're not Sweden. And I've harped on Sweden many times before, because it's a trove of sad data and statistics. And I think it's important for Canadians to realize this, and lots of Europeans as well need to know this. And I feel sorry for the Swedes. I've had some of them reach out to me and tell me that I need to speak more about it. So let's look at something real quick about Sweden to wrap up the episode.
Sure.
Go international. Sweden is the rape capital of Europe. But who's to blame? Well, data shows that migrant men of non-European origin commit 84% of assault rapes in Sweden, despite only making up less than 10% of the country's population. For example, an Algerian migrant is 122 times more likely to commit aggravated rape than a Swede. An Afghan, 69 times more likely. Someone from Tunisia, 53 times. Morocco, 43 times. A Palestinian, 30 times. And a Somali, 22 times. So, is it truly immigration? Like, is immigration an issue? So let's compare and contrast. Another Scandinavian country and neighbor is Norway. Very similar culture, very similar people. Well, Norway has 550,000 foreign-born individuals versus Sweden's 1.43 million. And this is all foreign-born individuals, by the way. This is not from targeted, perhaps problematic cultures. This is all things combined. Well, sexual violence rates in Norway is 95 per 100,000 compared to Sweden's 192 per 100,000, more than twice the amount. So it's not an easy thing to talk about, but when you have a clash of cultures that are incompatible with one another, it is the duty of a government to protect its people from it. Mm-hmm. Sweden is not better off today because it let in Eritreans and Afghanis and Somalis and Algerians. It's not better. It's let in also plenty of other people who've contributed massively. But as a cohort, and of course, these are generalizations, but when you have statistics that showcases 122 times more likely to cause not like, a petty theft. We're talking aggravated assaults, rape. Well, at one point, you know what? I'll use this analogy to close it up. If you had a bowl with 3 different types of apple, red apples, yellow apples, and green apples, and I told you there is 1 out of 10 green apples that is actually poisonous and it will kill you if you eat it. Would you eat a green apple or would you just stick to the red and the yellows?
The red and the yellows. Until
you can ascertain which one is the poisonous one, you would cordon off, you would banish eating all green apples. And guess what? 9 out of 10 green apples are safe to eat, but that one will kill you. Mm-hmm. So you don't take a risk. Well, when you consider that such a huge amount of people from certain cultures cause a disproportionate, not just a little bit more, a complete hazardous level of disproportional crime, you have to stop it, ascertain to make sure the people that are in your country are fine, the ones that are not out, and until you can properly vet people, you must stop effectively self-sabotaging and killing yourself.
I totally agree. And from the numbers you're sharing, it seems like it's 9 out of the 10 apples that are rotten, to be honest, if you look at the raw statistics. And I don't think there's any shame in the message you're sharing. I think it's totally valid. And reckless immigration, you import, it's not even that complicated, okay? You import uneducated, poor people who have no vision or no goals for the future. That's the result you get. Short-term pleasure. Let's go assault this person and accomplish nothing and take whatever government benefits, handouts we can get. You know, the Somalis in the U.S. committed more fraud in the U.S. than the GDP of Somalia. Okay, it's utterly disgusting. I'm kind of done with this. Let's make sure their feelings aren't hurt. Well, stop committing fraud, stop committing most of the sexual assaults in Sweden, and maybe we'll take you a bit more seriously. Show up as a doctor, show up as an actual engineer, show up as someone who has skills and talents, and maybe, hey, your country's falling apart, you need a new place and to stay, and you want to be a productive member of society, you want to be a doctor, you want to be a lawyer, you want to be an engineer, you want to study, you want to raise productive kids. Welcome.
Yeah.
You come in to a new country and then start sexually assaulting the women who are just trying to, probably get to work or whatever it is they're trying to do. Well, you automatically, in my opinion, in my personal opinion, you're a barbarian. Get out of here.
Absolutely.
I'm done being nice. And I'm brown, so I can take the shield and say, hey, it's okay. I'm allowed to say that in today's society, but I don't care about the backlash.
I'm brown too. I self-identify as brown. Actually, no. But anyways, guys, this wraps up episode 108. Thank you so much. Subscribe, like, share, hit the bell, notification icon, do all those beautiful things. And most importantly, like I said, comment down below. Let us know what you think. Should Canada import more people from Somalia?
And the answer is no.
let us know. But until next time, we also have a Patreon. If you've watched all the way up to here, you owe us $8. No, you don't owe us anything, but it would be greatly appreciated if you subscribe $8 to keep us independent and not take the $7,000 that is being offered.
Hey, and a final note, thank you for all the support you guys give us. You know, we get a lot of lovely comments from people who are just saying, hey, we just found your podcast. We're so excited about it. We subscribe. Really brightens up my day. I'm happy to do the work we're doing, and we'll see you next time.
Amen. Cheers.